Good morning. The CJS Subcommittee on Commerce, Justice, and Science will come to order. We know that a lot is happening today, that the gentlelady from Louisiana will be doing her markup in Homeland Security. And, of course, we have a very important vote scheduled for 11 o'clock. So we're going to move right along here. The subcommittee will come to order, and I'm pleased to hold this markup for the fiscal year 2014 CJS bill. This bill totals $52.3 billion in discretionary spending, consisting with the subcommittee's proposed allocation. It is $2.1 billion over 2013 and $263 million above the president's request. The subcommittee members have received a copy of a chart showing the funding levels in the bill. Your staffs have had the opportunity to read both the bill and the report. This bill, I'm happy to say, is the product of bipartisan conversation and cooperation. I'm going to thank Senator Shelby and his staff for their collegiality and the way we worked on national priorities. Within our funding level, the CJL bill prioritizes saving lives and protecting the safety of our citizens and helping the private sector create jobs through innovation and promoting U.S. business and protecting their intellectual property. This bill helps keep America safe, help our citizens prosper, and should help make America more competitive, innovative, and resilient. I'm going to focus on a few issues, one of which is keeping America safe. We can't have strong, vibrant communities unless they are safe. That's why the CJS bill includes $28.5 billion for the Justice Department, which is at or above the requested funding levels for the federal law enforcement, FBI, DEA, and ATF, the Marshal Service, and the U.S. Attorney's Office. This bill provides $2.4 billion to support what I call the thin blue line, the local law enforcement people, and also our state. We're adding $233 million above fiscal year 2013 to key grants that enable us to hire more police officers. I've got a growing crime rate in Baltimore City to provide in the area of violence against women, money to support those who want to leave violent abusers and start a new life. Also, it breaks the school-to-prison pipeline, keeps schools secure, and roots out and prosecutes our most violent gangs, an issue raised by Senator Kirk of Illinois, who brought this to my attention and looked at how we could work again on a bipartisan basis. Through working again with our local law enforcement, we'll put away rapists, child abusers, and molesters. The Baltimore Sun reports this morning that there was a national raid against a network of 255 sexual predators who were recruiting teenagers and young children online. 5 were nabbed in my state, but at least 255 now are in jail in orange jumpsuits waiting trial. This is kind of what we pay for, and that's what America wants us to pay for. The CJS subcommittee also puts money in the federal checkbook for R&D because innovation does create, it helps through our great federal labs and the National Institutes of Standards, coming up with new ideas that will lead to new products to America and protect American jobs. We fund the patent office, and we know that there'll be issues related to also the fee issue there, but we need to protect our intellectual property against everything from cybersecurity or America's ideas and innovation being stolen. These agencies, like NIST, NSF, and NASA itself, fund research that is the foundation for these new approaches. Once again, we want to look through not only winning Nobel Prizes, which we're very good at in this country, but we want to win the markets. We're so pleased that Penny Pritzker was nominated by the president and actually confirmed by the Senate, and she will now be hopefully not only our ambassador, will be President Obama's ambassador to business. But we need our own ambassadors, and that is the commercial service offices, which are on the front lines working with American business, small and medium size, to help them sell their products overseas. Again, working across the aisle with Senator Lindsey Graham, we've looked at how we can reposition out of Europe, where we already have existing trade routes, into new opportunities in Africa and Asia. And we thank Senator Graham for his excellent suggestions on how we can really improve this. This bill will provide $500 million to ITA to make sure that we enforce trade agreements. We actually produce trade agreements that meet international law, and a foreign commercial office that looks forward to working with business to promote business overseas. There's much more to be said about this bill, but in the interest of time, I look forward to moving this bill out of the subcommittee into the full committee. I now want to turn to Senator Shelby for his remarks, and again, want to thank him for his cooperation and collegiality. The members on my side of the aisle who had excellent ideas in the area of law enforcement, science and technology, and promoting American business. And many on the other side of the aisle, two I've just mentioned, but others as well, that we could incorporate in the bill and actually work together. Actually listen to one another with mutual respect, meeting the needs of our country and advancing our interest. We've got some tough issues on top lines and bottom lines, but I think we've got a good lineup in this bill, and I turn to Senator Shelby.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First, I'd like to thank you for your leadership on this bill, you and your very professional staff. We worked together, as everyone knows, I think, on many issues throughout our years, and I believe that this mark today reflects our strong bipartisan relationship. The recommendation before us, as the chairwoman has pointed out, is consistent with the subcommittee's allocation of $52.3 billion. This allocation, however, is based upon a 302A allocation of $1.058 trillion. And while I believe the subcommittee mark strikes a balance between the competing priorities of law enforcement, terrorism, prevention, research, scientific advancement, and U.S. competitiveness, I have concerns about the overall allocation. For that reason, and that reason alone, I will vote against the bill at the full committee. I believe that we have a good product here, and I appreciate the chair's willingness to accommodate the interest of a majority of senators in the draft before us, both sides of the aisle. Madam Chair, you've described the thrust of the bill, and I briefly want to just emphasize a few more points. The bill includes, as you mentioned, robust funding for the Department of Justice and law enforcement grant programs that are essential to state and local law enforcement efforts. Additionally, the bill continues to prioritize the protection of our children and communities through the robust funding for the Adam Walsh Act, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The mark includes essential funding to track down, arrest, and prosecute predators who prey on our nation's children. And with respect to the Department of Commerce, the bill provides important resources to support NOAA's next generation of weather satellites and ensures the National Weather Service can continue to provide timely warnings for dangerous weather outbreaks that are sure to come. The bill also supports long-standing economic development programs as well as manufacturing and innovation through partnerships and support for the private sector. I'm pleased also that the bill addresses some key concerns in the Gulf of Mexico and surrounding states, including the continued need for baseline data following the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. In addition, the mark supports improved management practices for red snapper, which are consistent with a growing population of fish, which is good news. The subcommittee mark includes $18 billion for NASA. These funds will give NASA the ability to maintain key schedules for ongoing missions and activities, including development of a heavy lift launch vehicle, while funding ongoing activities of the International Space Station and other important research activities. I also want to commend the chair for working with me to include language that provide greater accountability and budgetary transparency to the commercial crew program to ensure that taxpayers are getting the best value for their dollar. And again, Madam Chairman, I want to thank you for working with all of us on drafting this bill.
Thank you, Senator Shelby. Are there any other members who wish to comment? Senator Linder.
Madam Chair, thank you so much for allowing me as the newest member to go first. As you know, I have a markup at 10:30, and I want to speak before I'm going to have to leave to conduct the markup on Homeland Security. But I just wanted to say a few things. I have no amendments to offer. I support the mark that you and Senator Shelby have put together and want to commend you for your excellent work and your comments. And while we haven't been able to agree on the top line, there's a lot of agreement in the lines that follow. And so I'm very, very proud of your leadership, Madam Chair, on this effort. I just want to mention 5 things very quickly that are very important to Louisiana and that we were able to be successful. First, as chair of the Small Business and Entrepreneur Committee, and I have other members, Senator Pryor is on that committee as well. Others have been very interested. Senator Coons has been, and other members. We've heard over and over and over again the importance between startup businesses and their access to capital. And small businesses are creating the jobs, as you know, Madam Chair, and in your mark, you have included an EDA, additional monies for EDA, and then an additional inside of that, $25 million at my request for regional strategic alliances. The reason I mention this is because it's not just getting the capital to small businesses, but as you know well, Madam Chair, it's creating the ecosystem for entrepreneurship, and that's what these EDA grants do. I hear very positive comments about them from the business community and local officials, so thank you for that. Secondly, I wanted to acknowledge Senator Shelby's leadership with the red snapper issue. It's a big issue in the Gulf Coast, Madam Chair. You know fisheries well. We put language in here to direct NOAA to use real-time data in their projections so that we are not stopping fishing of people that make a living and have for generations, not just the boat captains and the fishermen themselves, but as you know, Madam Chair, the communities that rely on the robust industry. So you have addressed that very well in the bill. Thirdly, although the President zeroed out CASA, and I know the President's under a lot of stress, this is court-appointed special advocates, he's got to find savings in this budget. We disagreed that this was a place for savings, and you have plussed up CASA from 6 to 10 million. These are volunteers, members, that show up in court. We don't pay them a dime. They show up in court voluntarily to advocate on behalf of some of the most vulnerable children in our nation. This little $10 million that we give is just absolutely leveraged like the loaves and the fishes, over and over again to take care of just really important needs of these vulnerable children, many of whom, Senator Shelby, you know, have been victims of abuse, sexual abuse and violence in their own homes. So, Senator Mikulski, you've been true to your roots as a social worker, and I thank you. 2 more things quickly. The space program, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, Florida, Maryland, and other states. Louisiana is proud of the role it plays in space, and you've got my commitment to continue helping. And then finally, and the last is short but a little controversial. I'm not going to offer an amendment, but as I've described to the staff and to you all, Louisiana is having a little problem with the Justice Department right now. They audited a Young Marines program and have sent not a letter but an email claiming that the children in this program cannot pray. This is a big problem for me. It's a big problem for my state. I think the direction is unconstitutional. I'm not going to offer an amendment today, but I'm going to work with you all to the full committee, and hopefully we can come up with some language that clears this up, that children in programs like this can voluntarily pray. They can have God in their pledge. We have it in ours. This program is run by the Marines. I think this is important. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Senator Kirk.
Madam Chair, I want to thank you for including $19.5 million in here to combat gangs of national significance. Just randomly, let me just tell you that we have found that the Bloods are now in all 23 counties of Maryland, including Baltimore City, and the Crips equally cover same large area. My hope is that we can finally have a coordinated and funded effort to take down gangs of national significance, which my hope will focus on a particularly terrible gang in Chicagoland called the Gangster Disciples, who killed Hadia Pendleton, a 15-year-old cheerleader who had just marched in the president's inaugural. And the president has been paying a lot of attention to the grief of the Pendleton family. Really want to thank you, Madam Chair, for doing this. I'm going to be uniquely focused on the gang situation in Baltimore because of the synergy of what we can do between Chicago and Baltimore. I want to really thank you for backing this effort. This is to take out, my hope is to eventually call this like the Elliott Ness program, based on a federal effort in Chicago which took out Al Capone.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Kirk. I just would like to respond to you. One, thank you for raising this issue with me. And just about the time you started to talk, what emerged was a terrible thing we have at the Baltimore Detention Center, where a gang called the Black Guerrilla Organization is not only doing despicable things at the detention center, but creating gang activity outside that is vile, violent, vicious, and unacceptable. And so we have a lot to do together, and I would think so many of other communities are facing it, and we look forward to working with you. Senator Collins?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, let me thank you and the ranking member for all of the work that you did in putting together what I believe to be an excellent bill. I particularly want to thank you for the investments in the bill in fisheries, stock assessments, cooperative research, surveys, monitoring, observer coverage, and the funding to help address the 2012 fisheries disasters that have affected so many of our states. I also am pleased that you've included language to encourage the Drug Enforcement Agency to ensure that our military service members and veterans have equal access to appropriate methods for safe disposal of prescription medications. This is a huge problem, and it's been linked directly to the number of suicides that we're seeing.
Right.
And I've been at a loss for why there hasn't been more cooperation, so thank you for ensuring that DOD and the VA are able to conduct drug take-back operations at approved facilities. I also just want to comment briefly on the drug courts. I have seen in Maine the difference that these have made. I've spoken at a graduation of one class. I've actually hired a graduate who worked for me for several years. And these drug courts really turn lives around. They save money. In fact, I'm told by Judge Fowle in Maine, who's a Maine District Court judge that I met with yesterday, that when you consider the savings from everything from reduced health care costs, victimization, getting people back working, that drug courts save $27 for every dollar invested. What a return. Most important, they reclaim lives. So thank you for the work that you're doing. I'd like to see us do even more on that if we could, but I know we're under budget constraints. Great job.
Madam Chairman.
Senator Feinstein.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you, as Senator Collins and others have, for your usual good job. I think this is a very good bill. I think the justice numbers in particular are good. I want to thank you for including some funding for counter-narcotics efforts in Afghanistan. One of the problems there is that poppy has increased. Despite all efforts, it's increased rather dramatically. Now, why should we care? The reason we should care is because the shadow government of the Taliban taxes it, taxes the transportation of it, the movement of it, and that goes in to support Taliban efforts. So you did put in language seeking continued counter-narcotics efforts in Afghanistan, and I very much appreciate that, so thank you.
Senator Shelby.
I think,
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Coons.
Madam Chair, if I might just briefly, I wanted to thank you as the chair and ranking Senator Shelby for working so well together. It is so encouraging to be a part of a positive progress here on this subcommittee. The mark includes significant investments for cybersecurity in the workforce, for state and local law enforcement, for sustaining the Hollins Manufacturing Extension Partnership, which I've worked closely with in Delaware, for science, engineering, and education for sustainability. I think a very promising small program, and to sustain Bulletproof Vest Partnership, which I think is of great importance to our local law enforcement. I'm grateful for all the priorities reflected in this and look forward to supporting.
Well, you're welcome. You know, a lot of these programs that we have here were started by your predecessors, then Senator Biden, particularly his devotion to law enforcement. And this is where I really think we can find common ground. There are other issues, but I think particularly on protecting our people. So thank you. Thank you, Senator Feinstein. Senator Bozeman.
Madam Chair, very quickly, I do want to thank you and the ranking member for your leadership and the example. As a new member, I've been very, very pleased with the openness of the committee, the willingness to work with us, and I think very importantly, the ability to amend and this and that. And so, you know, this is how it ought to work. And again, I'm just really pleased to be on board. It's been more than I expected. And so give yourselves a pat on the back. Thank you.
Madam Chairman.
Senator Shelby.
I now move that the subcommittee adopt the chairwoman's recommendation and authorize the staff to make any necessary technical and conforming changes.
Without objection, the bill and any amendment will, and there are no amendments, will be recommended to the full committee, which will mark up on Thursday morning. Is there a request for a roll call vote, or could we go to a voice? Okay, all those in favor for reporting out the CJS bill signify by saying aye. Opposed, say no. By a unanimous roll call vote, the bill is recommended to the full committee. The subcommittee is adjourned, and we will meet at full committee 10 o'clock Thursday morning. And I'm going to thank again everybody for their cooperation.
Good job.
52.3 billion in discretionary spending, consisting with the subcommittee's proposed allocation. It is 2.1 billion over 2013 and 263 million above the president's request. The subcommittee members have received a copy of a chart showing the funding levels in the bill. Your staffs have had the opportunity to read both the bill and the report. This bill, I'm happy to say, is the product of bipartisan conversation and cooperation. I'm going to thank Senator Shelby and his staff for their collegiality and the way we worked on national priorities. Good morning. The CJS Subcommittee on Commerce, Justice, and Science will come to order. We know that a lot is happening today, that the gentlelady from Louisiana will be doing her markup in Homeland Security. And, of course, we have a very important vote scheduled for 11 o'clock. So we're going to move right along here. The subcommittee will come to order, and I'm pleased to hold this markup for the fiscal year 2014 CJS bill. This bill totals, within our funding level, the CJL bill prioritizes saving lives and protecting the safety of our citizens and helping the private sector create jobs through innovation and promoting U.S. business and protecting their intellectual property. This bill helps keep America safe, help our citizens prosper, and should help make America more competitive, innovative, and resilient. I'm going to focus on a few issues, one of which is keeping America safe. We can't have strong, vibrant communities unless they are safe. That's why the CJS bill includes $28.5 billion for the Justice Department, which is at or above the requested funding levels for the federal law enforcement, FBI, DEA, and ATF, the Marshal Service, and the U.S. Attorney's Office. This bill provides $2.4 billion to support what I call the thin blue line, the local law enforcement people, and also our state. We're adding $233 million above fiscal year 2013 to key grants that enable us to hire more police officers. More police officers. I've got a growing crime rate in Baltimore City. To provide in the area of violence against women, money to support those who want to leave violent abusers and start a new life. Also, it breaks the school-to-prison pipeline, keeps schools secure, and roots out and prosecutes our most violent gangs, a issue raised by Senator Kirk of Illinois, who brought this to my attention and looked at how we could work again on a bipartisan basis. Through working again with our local law enforcement, it will put away rapists, child abusers, and molesters. The Baltimore Sun reports this morning that there was a national raid against a